say.
Yo, what's good? What's good with y'all, man? What's up? Yo, what's good? What's good? What's good? What's good? You know, we watching the, this is day 10, the Melly case. You know, I'm a little late. I went out with my family and shit. Came back, you know what I'm saying? And I was looking at a little bit of it.
And his testimony and to question him and to see exactly what it is that they will come up with on their cross-examination here, though.
Yeah. And Brian, let's talk about that. The defense, they're sitting there, they're gearing up for cross-examination. They're analyzing this evidence as it's being presented in court and this expert's testimony. What do you think their best line of questioning is, given the fact that their theory is that these bullets came outside of the car in terms of a drive-by shooting, yet this is sort of establishing, at least for the prosecution, that these may have been actually internal within that car, those shots being fired?
For lack of a better phrase, I think the theme should be check the math. The way I analogize it to is long division. You look at what number is going into what number and then the answer, and you're like, as a defense attorney, I'm not sure if I can argue the number, but let me check your math. Okay, did you carry the one here? Did you...
So they have the right to do that. The issue is, as long as they alert the defense counsel about it and defense counsel knows about it and it comes in before trial, then it's perfectly fine. And there was some issues prior during the trial where the prosecution tried to bring in some evidence that the defense stated that they had no idea about and that it was a matter of surprise. And when that did happen, the judge did the right thing here and he just didn't allow that into evidence. So that did happen here. But as long as everyone is on the same page, the prosecution has brought up that evidence to defense counsel, they know about it, and everyone knows about what's going on, then it's perfectly fine.
Okay, and Terry Austin, I'm going to throw this last question before we take a break to you. It's from Chris Carney from YouTube. And Chris wants to know.
My dog is barking and shit.
Well, I think what we're going to see from defense counsel is questioning about, was he there? He does not really know. These are guesstimates. They're talking about geometry and using the Pythagorean theory, and that's how he's calculating these projectiles and how the bullets were shot inside the car and how the bullets from outside the car were shot and he was standing still, whoever the shooter was. So I think all of that is going to be questioned, and he's going to have to explain, well, you know, you're right, I don't have the exact answer. He's already basically said he can't give specific distances and he can't give all of those estimates that are, you know, the estimates that we're all looking for. He can't give it exactly. And so I do think that that's something that we're going to see during the cross-examination of this sergeant. Now he's been promoted. I think other than that, you know, he's educated. He has a great background. He's been on the force for a while. I do also think that the defense is going to ask about, what do you think about the Miramar Police Department's investigation? Because there were a couple of times during the direct exam that he mentioned, the police did not look out in the area where I looked. I went back and I looked. And if you recall, we heard during the defense opening that the Miramar Police Department was criticized for not doing a thorough investigation. So I think I would ask about that as well. And he may actually be one of the people who said, you know, it was an atrocious investigation, but I would definitely question the shoddiness or the thoroughness of those investigations.
Yeah, we're going to be waiting to see that cross, but right now we're going to take a quick break. Keep those questions coming. On the other side of the break, we're going to be giving you some answers and taking more questions. Stay tuned here at Law and Crime.
I seen people, I seen this one video on there where somebody was talking about somebody was saying some bullshit to me because, you know, um they were like, oh, he did it. How you know he did it? How you particularly know that he did it? You know what I'm saying? There's no real hard facts. If you're not, to me, I've been watching this since I want to say the first day. You know what I'm saying? And what they fighting, bro? Like you got the defense fighting that's backing shit up, and also me sitting there like, okay, so if this happened, why not this? And the defense is answering that, and it's asking the same question. It's like they can't prove, the prosecutor cannot prove that Melly was there. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? If people saying, man, he did it, this, that, and the third. Well, where's the proof? Where is the proof? You're not proving nothing. You're just not proving nothing. Oh, they saying Young Thug snitch? Oh, hold on, y'all. Hold on.
Okay, welcome back to Law and Crime, and this is our Q&A session. Court is on their lunch break at the YNW Melly trial. That gives us the opportunity to take your questions and answer them with our great legal panel. And I have one question coming in right now for you, Bridget Williams. It's from Musical Jujutsu from Instagram. And the question is, if it is shown that the shooting could have taken place in the car, why wasn't there gun residue on him? Would he have had the time to change in there on the way to the hospital if he may have had a spare change of clothes with him?
That's a great question. I would say, starting out, one, that the gun residue, the prosecution hasn't really talked a lot about the gun residue, if it was on Melly or not. And if I were the prosecutor, I would be talking about that more. I feel like they should be really discussing that more if they had evidence to show that. And so if they don't have evidence to show that there was gun residue on Melly, then that definitely puts a hole in their prosecution. Now, that gives the defense counsel some really good leeway there to talk about, well, the gun residue was not found on Melly, and that the state has not really brought that up or has discussed that. And so that's a really great point for the defense to talk about as they continue on and when their cross-examination happens, along with when they put their own expert witness up, if they choose to do that. And if they decide that they're going to put up any other witnesses, that's going to be a great point for the defense.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be one point of reasonable doubt that the defense is going to be looking to hit home with the jury. Brian Buckmeyer, next question is for you. It's from @JustBrit910 from Twitter. The question is, so let's say it was a staged drive-by. Couldn't Melly have been dropped off somewhere and Cortland did this? He could have plotted this with Juvie, and after Juvie shot Sack, Cortland turned on Juvie and shot him. And also, these seem to be the best 2 days for the prosecution.
So I'll work backwards. I agree with you. This seems to be a better day for the prosecution. The trajectory of where the bullets came from, narrowing it down to a specific seat that we know that YNW Melly, at least at one point when he entered the vehicle, was sitting. That's strong evidence for them. But I agree with you as to your first part of your question, because I'm thinking about the cell phone tracking, where the two cell phones were together, traveling, then at some point they're separate. But they don't really have a timeline of what's going on when they're separate. So yeah, maybe YNW Melly leaves the vehicle and then the shooting happens afterwards. If I'm a defense attorney, I'm gonna tie that into the fact that no GSR, no gunshot residue was on Melly at the time. Because if you shoot a gun, the GSR ends up on you because of your hand and whatnot. But if you shoot a gun in a small confined area, GSR is on everyone. And so if there's none on Melly, maybe yes, he did get out of the car before this all went down. And maybe yes, he doesn't know exactly what's going on. So I think great question, absolutely a possibility. Again, is it doubt? Yes. Is it reasonable? It's up for the 12 people to decide.
Right. I think the defense is going to be going for a death of 1,000 cuts of reasonable doubt against this prosecution case, and that could be another cut right there. So next question for you, Terry. It's from Paragon from YouTube. The question is, why isn't the prosecutor not trying to show how Bortland isn't the shooter? I feel that this would give the jury more information on why this point towards Melly.
Well, I think the prosecution has to go with the evidence, and the evidence that they have so far, the best evidence they have so far, is from those two medical examiners and right now Sergeant Christopher Williams on the stand. And that evidence is showing that the bullets were shot from the back seat and into Anthony Williams and from the back seat into Christopher Thomas. And so they know for a fact when the people got into the car, they're saying Melly got into the back seat. So to say that the driver, Henry, was the one who did the shooting, I think would be antithetical to the evidence that they have. So the prosecution always has to go by that evidence. And right now, the evidence is pointing to someone who's sitting in the back seat. What they still have to do, and they haven't done yet, is to say that it was Melly in that car. Like Brian just mentioned, he could have gotten out of the car and someone else could have been sitting back there and doing the shooting. We actually don't have a gun in Melly's hand doing that shooting yet.
Yeah, and we spoke about this a little yesterday, this next question. And Bridget, I want to get your take on it. It's from K-Bands from YouTube. And K-Bands asked, regardless of the outcome of both trials, what's the chance a RICO happens? It seems like the state could have enough evidence for that.
Well, we don't know. The state may have an opportunity to do that. We just have to see how it goes. The state here has really focused their attention on Melly in this case. I'm interested to see how this continues to play out in Melly's case, and then when they again retry this case really with Henry, and see how that plays out first, and then we'll see if they even decide that they're going to move forward with a RICO type of situation. But right now, it's just the focus is on this particular trial. Is Melly convicted of the murder case, and then if so, do they have enough evidence to move forward with the death penalty or not?
Right. And Brian, next question for you is from Gavin Carey from YouTube, who asked, do you think that Melly will have the death penalty thrown out based on expert witnesses' testimony? It did not prove gang affiliation, more of association.
Yeah, I think yes, but so one, thank you for that question. Two, I think you're spot on. I think the idea of association rather than affiliation is smart. I would also ratchet it one more up. That's the First Amendment. You have the right to associate. It's not illegal to be a part of organizations or groups. That's why it's not illegal to be a part of like the KKK. It's not illegal to be a part of gangs. It's what you do within those groups that can be illegal. And so I think you're 100% right there. You're probably a future lawyer in the making. But I think that's almost putting the cart before the horse, because I'm not quite sure they can get a conviction yet. They've got to get the conviction before we have this conversation, but I think you're looking far ahead, and I think you are right in your analysis.
Right, and let's go to Bridget for the next question. It is from, actually this one's for you, Terry. Sorry, Bridget. It's from See Through You from YouTube, who wants to know, do you think the prosecution chose to prosecute Melly first to scare Cortland Henry into turning for the state?
Whoa, that's a great question. Oftentimes when you do have two co-defendants, one could turn on the other. Originally, this case was together. We had Henry and Melly who were being tried together, but it was severed. And so now Henry will come after Melly. And I do think there is some finger pointing already in this case. We have seen reference by defense counsel to the fact that it was Henry who went into that hospital and who basically initially lied to the police officers that he spoke to. It wasn't Melly who told, a lie. So he is essentially saying, don't forget, look at Henry, there's someone else too. Now, they haven't come right out and pointed the finger, and there hasn't been any evidence of them pointing the finger, but he did mention that during the opening statement. I think Henry will get the benefit of this trial to see what happens here. Obviously, if there's an acquittal, I think fingers will be pointing to Henry, and the prosecution will probably use that to go after Henry even further. I don't know what theory they're going to use if there's an acquittal here, but they'll somehow come up with a trajectory of the bullets that could have come from the front, or they'll have to change their tune at that point.
Right.
But definitely they can point together.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you for the questions there. We're going to be cutting out the Q&A right now, but thank you for your contributions. Stay tuned here at Law and Crime.
What's up? What's up? What's up? That shit over? Get the fuck out of here. It's over? Let's go back.
Court is on their lunch break at the YNW Melly trial. That gives us the opportunity to take your questions. And
In that car, like.
But yeah, man, like, hold on. Let's go back to this Young Thug shit. They saying this man is snitching. So hold on, let's go.
Yo, King AK-47, voice of the streets, man. Everybody make sure y'all hit that like button right now. Tap that like button for me. Subscribe to the channel. We like 200 away from 172,000. Get me there. And share this video. So this is going to be a two-part video, both dealing with Young Thug. If you don't want to hear the mess with the alleged Young Thug gave information about a murder, you can skip to the 8-minute mark. The 8-minute mark is where I will begin to talk about the RICO trial getting dismissed. If you want to hear about both, then let's get started. Follow me on Instagram at KingAK47_. The link will also be pinned in the comment section, and donate to the channel. Cash App will be pinned in the comment section. So I want to get this straight, right? So Young Thug lawyers are filing for a motion to not allow a detective to bring up paperwork along with his testimony on Young Thug at a young age giving up information about a murder in the back of a police cruiser. Now, it bothers me because I'm listening to Thug lawyers, and they're basically saying, no, we're not going to let him. My client was young at the time. What he's saying is false. Basically, the lawyers don't know that. The lawyers can only ask Thug, is this true or false? Thug tells them it's false, and then they come out on the behalf of Thug, and they announce that the accusations are false.
good afternoon and welcome back
that was
to
louder
the
than
Law
the
Crime
bitch.
Network. I'm Imran
God
Ansari,
dang.
and we continue to follow the trial of Jamel Demons, better known as YNW Melly. The South Florida rapper is on trial, accused of a double murder for the 2018 shooting deaths of Anthony Williams, also known as YNW Sack Chaser, and Christopher Thomas Jr., also known as YNW Juvie. All are part of the YNW collaborative, along with co-defendant Cortland Henry, who will be tried in a separate case. Now, today is day 10 of the trial, and we are hearing testimony from Sergeant Chris.
This is my thing, though, right? So, like I said, I see people, you know, they're on YouTube, they saying their little testimony, they saying their little piece and shit. Oh, Melly did it. You know what I'm saying? Let's be real, da 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 da. How did he do it? He don't got no gun residue on him, no DNA that he was in the car, and Portland have all that. So who really did it? Let's be real here. Melly don't got the evidence. Melly don't have nothing. Portland had all that and had to go and change clothes. Let's be real, man.
Yes.
Did you do that in this case?
Yes.
If you could just briefly, were you asked to consult at all with regards to cell phones?
No.
Any sort of location data or anything with regards to the location of an individual?
Location data, no.
Okay.
Location of an individual, yes.
And that's within the car?
Correct.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the physical evidence that you reviewed.
This dog pissing me off, y'all.
In terms of in this warehouse, are the cars sealed individually in each location?
Yes.
What types of materials are used to prevent cross-contamination from the various cars?
All of the cars are closed. They're sealed with red evidence tape. If windows are missing, plastic goes over them so that nothing can get into the car. The plastic would assume the role of windows so that nothing can get inside.
Okay. In terms of the security of the building,
Hold on, I gotta handle this dog, y'all.
Absolutely not.
when you are doing an analysis of this Jeep, this car.
Hold on, y'all. I gotta handle this dog. Hold on. Damn.
So in this case, I actually had that the vehicle in question towed from the confiscation warehouse to the crime scene unit, which has a forensic processing garage. And from there, I began my investigation on the vehicle.
In terms of the image that we're looking at here, can you show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury where that blowback pattern was?
It would be in. Is there a way to make it circle?
Would you like to draw?
Yes.
If I may.
It would be in this area right in here. It's a little bigger than I drew, but it's in this general area right here.
Okay. In terms of the information about that DNA, why is it important to know whose DNA that is?
Well, it's unusual to have the blowback on the headliner, so of course, and for this shooting incident, we would want to identify where that blood came from. So that's why it was sent to the lab to determine whose blood it was.
And was that determination made?
It was.
Okay. And whose blood was that?
That was the front seat passenger's blood.
In terms of the location and the pattern, what does that tell you about the orientation of the front seat passenger's head at the time of the shooting?
The front seat passenger's head was actually down almost as if he was sleeping, so it was down, leaning on the right at an angle. So his head was at an angle as he was seated in that front seat.
And based on your analysis of this vehicle, did you find any projectiles anywhere in the headliner?
No.
Did you find any projectiles in the top portion of the B pillar on the passenger side?
No.
What about the A pillar?
No.
Was there any projectiles in the front windshield?
No.
Based on your training and experience, can you state where the exit wound of that head had to have gone through? Where that projectile would have had to have exited that vehicle?
It would have exited through the front passenger window.
How can you say that?
Number one, there's no glass there. However, most importantly is the projectile entered in the back of his skull and exited through the front of his skull with his head at a resting angle. So, can I get up?
Please, that would help and assist in showing.
So this resting angle in this seat, you have the projectile coming in, exiting through the top of the skull, and then continuing through the windshield.
You said windshield.
The window.
Can you say that it was at the top of the window, or the bottom of the window, the middle of the window?
I cannot.
So based on that projectile and the blowback, you can make what opinions?
So based on the angle of this this projectile, the blowback is indicative of a firearm being in close vicinity of the head. The head is something that bleeds profusely when it's pierced. If you've ever fallen on stairs or hit your head, it bleeds like no tomorrow. And because the projectile entered in right below the skull, the blowback ended up coming in the direction of, as I was speaking earlier about the hose, in the direction that it came from. And you will get that with a very close shot. That blowback then proceeded after the shot. It went up, it hit this headliner, and continued and falling into the back seat.
Does this attempt to accurately recreate the potential location of that firearm?
So the purpose of this photograph is strictly demonstrative to show where once the projectile enters into the head, you're going to have the blowback, which again will come up, strike the headliner, and then continue. It's actually continuing this way and landing back here behind the driver in this area of the vehicle.
In terms of the driver and the t-shirt that he was wearing, do you take into account the location of the victim's DNA on his shirt?
Well, based upon the blowback pattern up here, I would expect to find some blowback here on a driver, if a driver was there.
So would you expect to find the DNA of Anthony Williams on the front of the driver's shirt?
Yes.
Okay. And were you made aware that that is the results that were in this case?
Later on, yes.
And in terms of how does that help with a check and balance on your work?
So that confirms my analysis with the blowback, that the blowback came back, went, like I said, went up. It's going to fall here, and then it's going to continue to fall into this back seat.
So I want to move on again, and you talked about like a wound that was close. Do you look for things like stippling in photographs?
Yes, so we'll look for.
Oh shit.
Do you want to know the secret to being an empowered entrepreneur? This
yeah.
secret was used by some of the best minds.
Of the deceased Anthony Williams.
Yes, there was some there. However, due to the fact that Anthony Williams has an intermediate object, i.e., the head back. What do that call?
Headrest.
The headrest.
That's the word you're looking for? Okay.
Due to the headrest being there, that's an intermediate item. So the projectile was able to go into into Anthony Williams. However, whenever you fire a gun, you have gunshot residue that's going to come out of the barrel and out of the ejection port. In this case, because of the position of Mr. Williams' head and the intermediate object of the headrest assumed most of the GSR, the gunshot residue, and then only some of it went into Mr. Williams.
Without a pattern, can you give any sort of a range of distance?
No, I cannot.
Okay, so let's bring in my guest, Aaron Reed. He is a criminal defense attorney in Phoenix, Arizona. Aaron, let's talk about some of Sergeant Williams' testimony here regarding aspects of his findings inside that vehicle. I'll start with the blowback pattern. What do you make of that testimony in terms of the blowback pattern, what he observed in the vehicle, and on also the decedents, and how is that significant to the prosecution's case?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. The blowback and blood spatter, these are things that prosecution tends to use in these cases. When you see a close range gunshot in a tight confined space like a car, you're expecting blood to kind of fly everywhere. And when you see these patterns and you see the front right passenger, his blood on the driver and vice versa, that shows that these two may have been shot in close proximity inside of the car. So that's what they're really using it for, to try to negate the drive-by.
Okay, and a lot of this testimony, Aaron, is scientific testimony. There's math. There's a lot involved here, and sometimes for a jury, that may be a lot to grasp and digest in terms of the testimony coming before them. How do you think the expert is doing, of course, on direct examination from the prosecution, in making this understandable to the jury, and how do you think the jury is receiving the evidence?
So far, I think he's doing a pretty good job. It really does help having visual aids like that he's using, because when you just talk about these kinds of things, it gets very boring, very mundane, and breaking up the monotony of a trial with, visuals and things like that can really help. But I do think that, this he's a little dry, but it's science, it's science-based testimony. It's always going to be kind of tedious, and it's just something that the prosecution has to do their best to get through and make sure that they make all their points that they need to make to confirm that this was a shooting from within the car and not outside of the car.
Yeah, what do you make about the location that this expert is giving in terms of the shooter being on the driver's side passenger seat? How is that significant in this case? And how's the prosecution going to be using that to really hit home that Melly was the shooter?
I think when you have this kind of testimony as a defense attorney, I see this as something that's one possible way of this happening. And that doesn't mean that it happened exactly the way that the expert is saying that it happened, but it is a plausible theory based on the evidence. And they have to put the shooting coming from that spot because that's where Melly was seated in the car when he left the recording studio. So they're trying to put that together to make the jury see, see, he was sitting there, he must have shot him from this angle. And I think that kind of testimony can be unbuttoned a little bit by a skillful cross-examination, which I expect to happen.
Right. Great analysis there, Aaron Reed. We're going to take a quick break here on Law and Crime. When we come back, more coverage of the YNW Melly trial. Stay tuned at Law and Crime.
LinkedIn has allowed me to brand myself as a true professional. You have my credential list, you know who I am, you understand that I have my insurance, that I have my certification, and really establish that I am someone who's dedicated to this profession.
I need waves in the sun, like another night on my tab. All hand class, about to take another lap. I'm going up, trying to see where I'm at. I ain't tripping up.
back to Law and Crime, and we continue to follow the trial of Jamel Demons, better known as YNW Melly. While we wait for court to return from their lunch break, we are recapping the testimony from earlier today from Sergeant Christopher Williams, who is a shooting reconstruction expert and a witness for the state. So let's hear more of his testimony from earlier today.
Did you review the medical examiner's report for the backseat passenger, Christopher Thomas?
I did.
Who was it that noticed a mislabeled entrance and exit wound?
I noticed that.
And what did you do when you realized that there was an issue or concern with the report?
I notified you that there was an issue, that a defect in Mr. Thomas was labeled twice.
Okay. And so what, after that was done, did you look through the photos from the hospital?
I did, because I observed that Mr. Thomas had a defect on his right quadricep area, the upper part of his leg. That came from the door, and it entered into the seat. And when I was looking at the autopsy photos of Mr. Thomas, I would expect to find an exit wound from the medical examiner's office, and they did not have a picture to produce that, and it wasn't annotated in their report. So again, I notified you of this discrepancy as well.
And in terms of, were you able to figure out and determine which projectile caused that specific injury based on your reconstruction?
I was.
So we talked a little bit about the shots to Anthony Williams. I'm going to move on and talk to any of the injuries to Christopher Thomas. What did you look at in review in trying to establish a shooting reconstruction of the injuries to Mr. Thomas?
So the rods from the rear of the vehicle, Mr. Thomas assumed most of his injuries from the
jury entry. Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record reflect the presence of the defendants, his counsel, Mr. State Attorney. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, all witnesses present on the stand. I hope you had a nice lunch. I didn't left off. Now we'll go on for a direct examination of the witness, Sergeant Williams. Counsel, ready to proceed.
So, Sergeant Williams, I want to go back and follow up on a couple of those things that we were waiting on. I want to start with this yellow raincoat that the blood was testified to as the blood of Anthony Williams. We were talking about that in connection with the blowback on that. Can you comment as to the location, if that would be consistent with it being in that location when the blowback from Anthony Williams' head wound occurred?
I don't think that it went back that far. Can you zoom in a little?
Sure.
And unblur it?
I'll go to the next photo on that one. Make it a little bit easier to see.
To me, that looks more like a transfer stain.
Okay.
Because it has smear in it with a drop of blood that's already dried, and so the blood is already dried and is transferred. So I think that's I believe that's a transfer stain with a hand.
Okay. So to go back to the photos that you had taken, For photo 6691 on this, what are you demonstrating in this photo?
This is a demonstrative photo that would show if an individual was seated in the rear passenger seat behind the driver, would be able to obtain a shot into the front seat passenger.
And in terms of the individuals that are in this car, how are they attired?
Mr. Williams had,
And sorry, let me clarify on that one. The people that are pictured in the photo,
oh yes,
what do they have on to protect the scene?
they're in Tyvek.
Okay. So going on to this next photo, what are you documenting here?
It is a photo from the other side of the vehicle for its demonstrative only.
What number?
6693. I'm sorry. 6692, now moving on to 6693.
And it's just an additional angle. It's all angles from the vehicle.
And in terms of, there's a marker spot there, the red marker on the back of that individual's head in the front seat. What is that showing?
That is the approximate entry point for the defect on Anthony Williams.
And so now going into photo 6696. What angle are you showing in this particular?
This is from the rear of the vehicle.
The orange that we see at the bottom right, what are those things?
Those are the trajectory rods.
Going into the next photo, which is for council, 6697.
That's another photo from the rear of the vehicle.
Are you in any way, shape, or form stating this is the gun that was used?
I'm not stating that's the gun that was used at all.
Okay. Going into 6698. Again, what are you documenting here?
That would be a photograph of the same positioning of the gun from behind from the rear of the vehicle.
Okay. Going to photo 6701. What are you showing here?
This is showing the proximity of the back seat passenger behind the driver in relation to the front seat passenger.
Okay. And so I'm going to go forward to some of the ones now with the ruler. When you are putting the tape measure in, what is your purpose of introducing the tape measure in these photos? And we're now here at 6708 and 6709.
To give, for the demonstrative photograph, to give a relation of distance.
Okay. And so in terms of this picture is showing what?
Well, it's not exactly to the end of the barrel of the firearm, and so it's approximately probably about 12 inches from the head to the end of the barrel.
And so showing it from the other side, is that the better angle?
Yes.
Okay, and that is photo 6713. What are you showing in this orientation of the arm?
It showed, the photo is showing that the arm does not have to be fully extended to obtain that shot.
And so going now to this photo, which is 6714, much greater distance. Up.
Correct. So 6714 shows the firearm in an alternative position, again for demonstrative purposes, to show a distance range, and a firearm can still be fired in that position and in the direction of the front seat passenger.
Okay. So now we're moving on to the rear passenger. Are you using the same demonstrative model for this individual?
Yes.
Okay. So you talked about the blood from Cortland, or the driver, Cortland Henry's shirt on the front. Was there also an analysis done of the blood on the back of Cortland Henry's shirt?
By the crime lab, yes.
Okay. And were you made aware of the results of the DNA of the blood sample on the back?
Objection, hearsay.
Excuse me. Watch him side. Sustain the objection, never mind. Just sustain. Rephrase your question.
So, Detective Williams, there's testimony before this jury as to the person who contributed the blood to the back of that shirt. How does that information help your analysis in terms of the shooting inside the car?
The information was learned by me after the fact, and
Objection, hearsay.
I'm not how it helped, not what the information was.
Go ahead.
and it helped to solidify my analysis.
Okay. In terms of, based on the information that you have, can you state how the driver was positioned when the shots occurred for the back seat passenger, Mr. Thomas?
The driver, in my opinion, was seated in the front seat when the shots were fired inside the vehicle.
And in terms of how would blood get on the back of the shirt?
Because he's seated in that position.
Okay. So I want to ask, can we put some chairs here to help demonstrate what we're talking about?
Sure.
So you reviewed all of the photos from the initial Miramar crime scene?
Yes.
And is there a difference in the height of the front seats and the back seats?
There are.
And so this is not anywhere close to exact. Is that a fair statement with the chairs here?
Correct.
So, can you demonstrate, if you were the driver, how you would be positioned when the individual sitting in the rear passenger side seat is shot? If you could step down and show how would the blood from him then be on this individual?
So the driver is seated in this position, just seated here, and not moving. The blood from this individual, from the blowback, lands here, and blood from this individual lands on the back, and it's all from just not moving.
Okay. In terms of the back of the seat, is his back pressed against the back of the seat?
Yes.
Okay. And that for the first individual or the second individual?
For both.
Okay. In terms of, and you can resume your seat, we'll come back to this in a moment. So in terms of the distance between the individual in the rear driver's side seat and Mr. Thomas in that, do you know there to be a minimum distance they were separated by?
Can you restate that?
Sure. The individual, whoever was in the rear passenger seat on the driver's side, and then Chris Thomas, who is in the rear passenger seat passenger side. Is there a minimum distance that they are separated by?
There is.
And how do you know that?
So we have a known distance. As I said earlier, we are confined to the inside of this vehicle. So we have a known distance of shoulder width inside the back seat of this vehicle. We know a distance of shoulder width of Mr. Thomas, and then we would be able to deduce the difference between the center console and another passenger.
So in terms of the photos at the Jeep when it first came to the hospital, are you aware of how the back center console was positioned?
Yeah, it was down just like that.
And showing from what's been previously admitted into evidence as States 30, photo DSC_0127. Is that important for your reconstruction?
Correct. So this is the blood that is on the center console is consistent with Mr. Thomas crumbling into the position above or onto the center console of the back seat.
So the next photo in that series, again from States 30, is that one shows DSC_0133. Is this the plastic bag you spoke about and processed?
Yes.
Going back to your photos, what are you demonstrating in CSW_6716?
So this is a demonstrative photograph to show that you can fire a firearm from that position in the direction of a passenger who would be seated in that seat.
Okay. Now, looking from the other angle, what are you looking at in this photo, which for the record is 6717?
And that is just a forward picture from the front of the vehicle facing towards the back of the vehicle to show that it is still possible to fire a firearm inside the vehicle.
Okay. And then in terms of the
okay, if that's the case,
how far away is the firearm from
no
the
blood
face
or
that
residue got on Melly though?
Which is 6719.
In this particular demonstrative, it's
they still got to explain that.
6 inches.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury if Mr. Thomas was sitting straight up and didn't move to the side to get away from a gun?
At one point, I believe that he did.
And how do you know that?
Because Mr. Thomas has what's called a defensive wound on his right hand, and that defensive wound was caused by a projectile. So I believe that at some point he turned and put his hands up or attempted to de-escalate what was going on and received the firearm projectile through his thumb.
Okay, and so you're pointing to your right hand. In terms of the injuries to Mr. Thomas, do you recall which hand they are on?
I would have to look at the photograph.
Okay, we can come back to that in a moment on that. So the Ms. Smith is
ah, damn it! I hate this shit.
The
my bad,
defensive
y'all.
one. Why is that important for you as a shooting reconstructionist?
Because it lets me know that Mr. Thomas was not aware of what was going on. He was taken by surprise, and his hands being up. If his hands were down, he would not receive a projectile through his thumb. His hands are in an up position, almost saying, maybe don't shoot, or I relinquish or something, but he receives a defensive wound due to that projectile. And I think at that point he repositioned to be forward facing.
Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to approach with the ME photos, which are State 75. Showing you what's been previously admitted as State 75. Which hand is pictured as the wound in photo 12 on that exhibit?
It's the left hand.
Continuing on with regards to, we talked about, you can state that the rear I'm sorry, the front passenger side door, that the window was taken out by the projectile from Mr. Williams' head.
Correct.
Can you testify as to whether or not the door was open?
I cannot. I have no idea if the door was open or not.
Okay. As to the door next to Mr. Thomas, the rear passenger side door, can you testify, give any opinion as to the state of that door when the shot to the face took place?
No.
Why not?
Well, I believe, actually, let me recant. I believe the door was closed. There is actually a projectile that goes through Thomas's door during this incident and actually enters into the driver rear door.
The driver rear door. Okay.
Correct.
So, I want to, in terms of the driver rear door, is open or closed?
I believe this door, the door that you asked about, was closed.
Okay.
Oh shit.
Excuse me, can I just clarify what door we're talking about?
That's what I'm getting ready to do.
Christopher Thomas's door.
Okay, so we're clear here for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. If this is the seat for Mr. Thomas, the door that was right to the right of him, you believe was closed.
Correct.
And why can you say that?
Because we have a projectile that enters in this door and travels across the vehicle and into the other door, into the back passenger, the driver passenger door.
So the door here on to the left, if you're facing forward in the car, the door to the left of Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Okay. Can you state how that door was positioned during the drive-by, the stage drive-by?
So after Mr. Thomas was shot, the door of the backseat passenger, driver back door, was in an open position.
How can you tell that?
It was in an open position because of the projectile strike, the projectile that I spoke about earlier that enters in from the passenger side rear door, travels across the vehicle and enters into the door panel of the driver's side rear door.
Okay, so I'm going here to photo 6733 that you took. There's now another individual outside the car. What is this individual in this photo trying to demonstrate?
This is another demonstrative of an alternative theory.
Okay.
Of if a shot could be obtained from a person outside of the vehicle.
Okay, and so you mentioned we were talking about the one that goes through into the door here. Where
Correct.
did it strike that driver's side rear door?
It struck it where the speaker is.
Okay.
And it struck, so if you have a picture of the door, you'll see that the speaker is whole, and then it has, because it's a speaker, so it's pretty thick, and the projectile actually entered on the front of this speaker. If the door was in the closed position, the projectile should have went into the speaker.
6733.
This one right here is 6733. Okay. So, and there's some other photos that we'll come back to from Miramar to discuss that one. But right here, so you're saying an alternative proposition is being demonstrated by 6733.
Yes.
Are you able to rule this out as a possibility?
Yes, because number one, the angle would not be able to be obtained into Anthony Williams. Number two, if the shot was made, the blowback would be more of a vertical blowback.
And so what do you mean by vertical?
So it wouldn't come up and down.
Okay.
So because of where we're at as you stated earlier, of being how the seats are and the closeness, this is a little further away, so you're not going to obtain as much blowback to be able to hit up here, and the blowback would come this way, back that way.
Okay.
It wouldn't go any other way.
So I want to go, so we've gone through, that was 6733. So going to I want to go back a little bit on the angle for Mr. Thomas from that alternative proposition. So we're going to go to 6722. And what are you demonstrating in
individual reaching into the vehicle to fire a weapon at Mr. Thomas.
And in terms of the shot, could the individual get that angle if from outside?
So if the individual could obtain that angle and make that shot, unfortunately they would have to be the arm would have to be completely up against the passenger. So in the photo here, the person represented with sunglasses, the arm of the shooter would have to be completely against that person to make that shot. And I don't believe that this scenario is feasible.
Okay. So, and now that was 6723. Are you showing the same thing?
Yes.
Going to 6730. What are you demonstrating with this trajectory rod and this photo?
So this is the suspected trajectory of the flight path of the projectile that went into Anthony Williams. Again, as I stated, Mr. Williams had his head canted to the right, which is the reasoning for the flight path and its continued perforation into the window, perforated the window and exited the vehicle.
So, Sergeant Williams, I want to ask, were the driver's side window intact?
Yes.
Were you provided the keys to the car to be able to turn power on and to put them down for purposes of pictures if need be?
Yes.
So on 6732, what is, you showing the same thing as the last photo?
Correct. This is another demonstrative with the firearm canted and a downward with the ejection port facing down. And again, you would literally have to be leaning into the vehicle and onto the person who is seated in the rear passenger seat behind the driver in order to obtain that shot.
Okay. And is this the opposite angle?
That's one we already discussed.
Okay. Yes, you're right, 6733. Moving on to 6736.
What was the one just before that?
6735. And so in this instance, is this firearm, the magazine has been removed?
Correct, for safety purposes.
They said the government cooking. They're not really cooking nothing because it's not proven that it was Melly.
What is this showing?
They don't prove nothing.
This is just another demonstrative of the firearm.
What they proving is
with the ejection.
What they really trying to prove is they're not a drive-by. So a drive-by didn't occur. But they have to prove that Melly was sitting in that car, Melly pulled that trigger, and Melly did it. That's what they got to prove. everything else is relevant to me. You feel me? Like, I mean, people want to sit there and say, "Oh man, this, that, and the third," and y'all fans and y'all brainwashed. How? If the evidence is not there. Now, if the evidence was all there and everything was right there, I would have said, yeah, bro, guilty as a motherfucker. I can't fan, not fan, listen to his music, not listen to music. You gotta understand, yeah, he guilty. But if there's nothing against him and there's no hardcore evidence to find Melly guilty, then how can you sit there and say he's guilty? But this not proving shit, because all this is proving that it wasn't a drive-by. Which I'm waiting for the defense to say something that I could sit there and be like, cause how do y'all like
a little bit on that aspect? As to one that is labeled A, could you describe where that is on the vehicle?
That is in the rear hatch of the vehicle. It actually perforates the plastic. That whole back of the vehicle where it states Jeep is actually plastic, and it perforates the plastic, perforates the
shit. If anything, this goes more into juvie shit, bro. I mean, Brolin. My fault. This goes more into Brolin because Bortman, because dog, he was a driver. He had the residue on him. He changed his clothes. Like, that's more realistic than people saying, man, this is realistic. Melly did it. Y'all gotta da-da-da-da. No proof, my nigga. You know? But
E, F, G, and H. Were you able to determine if there was a change in the angle side to side on them?
meaning a shooter's changing
lanes in a car, let's say.
So the majority of these shots was from a standing, stationary position.
And how can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that?
Because it's what's known as in firearms as a grouping. So it's grouped pretty close together, which means that the person's stationary, firing a firearm, and actually creating a grouping of. So if the person's moving, you won't have such a grouping. It'll be scattered.
If the vehicle was moving, would that affect it?
Yes.
In terms of the glass in the back, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury whether or not the rods that are indicated, and again the photo that we just looked at, 6753, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H at the top, I'm going to go to photo 6760, if the glass was in place when they went through?
So I would surmise that the first 2 or 3 rounds took out the glass altogether, and the rest of the rounds were not affected by the glass, and that is evident by the firearms unit of our lab being able to positively identify the projectiles, because the glass will make artifacts onto a projectile as the projectile passes through it, and if there's artifacts on there, our lab would not be able to identify those items.
Okay, so you said that you figured 2 or 3. Why would you give a range of 2 or 3 could have gone through the glass?
It's a rather large window. Again, it has the plastic in between it, and it's going to take quite a bit to remove it completely.
Okay. And
now keep in mind, this is not the way that it was when this vehicle presented itself to the hospital.
Okay. And you've reviewed those photos?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go through. Did you turn on power to that Jeep you mentioned?
Yes, battery pack.
Okay. And so the Bluetooth was able to be turned on?
Yes, there's a non-blurry one.
Sorry. In terms of the phones that were the most paired phones on this, what were they?
So we have 5 paired phones on this infotainment center. Number 1 just states iPhone. Number 2 states YNW apostrophe S iPhone. 3 states the same. 4 states YNW TALABAN. And 5 states iPhone.
We talked briefly about the B-pillar column that you recovered that second projectile from. Is this a photo of that B-pillar?
Yes.
Okay. Going forward, what are we looking at in this photo, which for the record is 6773?
So this is actually the perforation site of the B-pillar, of the projectile perforating the B-pillar panel.
Okay. And then once it was removed, and that's in photo 6775 and then 6776, but staying on 6774 right now. What is this picture showing?
That would be the projectile.
Okay. And then 6775
is a close-up of the projectile.
So I want to go to the, and then you mentioned on the back, that was, we'd already reviewed that photo, which was 6777.
Yes.
So I want to go to the outside of the vehicle and talk about the impact strikes there. You have rods through I, J, K, L, N, O, and P. Why not M?
M is a penetrating strike mark. It actually perforates the skin of the door and then stops at the B-pillar. And because the B-pillar did the job that it's supposed to do, it's actually designed to stop around. So there cannot be a secondary spot to put a rod in to create a trajectory.
Okay. So in terms of sites I, J, K, L, N, O, and P, do you have an opinion as to how fast the muzzle of the gun was moving when those shots were fired?
I don't have an opinion. I would say that they're not even methodical. They're scattered. There's no grouping with them. It's there's no methodical reason to it. It's senseless firing into a vehicle.
Okay. And in terms of which of these I, J, K, L, N, O, or P goes through and strikes the driver's side rear door? Do you know which of those that was?
Can I look at my report?
If you need to refresh your recollection, please.
Judge, could we get the date of the report? There's several reports.
Sure. Which report are you referring to, Detective?
November 16, 2021.
Okay.
The amended?
No, 16th, the initial.
They both say that. Okay.
It would be site M. M as in Mike.
Okay. So M is the one that you could connected through to the other side?
Yes.
Okay. Detective, I'm sorry, I thought you said M stopped at the B pillar.
Yeah, I read it. Let me look again.
Excuse me, thank you. From the cold air, Judge.
It's freezing. My apologies, it's site K. K
Oh.
kilo.
K kilo. Okay. So when you are going through the rear of the car and documenting all of the strike marks, do you assign a letter to the one that you found in the B pillar?
That became site Q.
Okay. So in terms of the total number of projectiles that were fired from outside the car to the inside, how many were there? Sorry.
So we have 17.
And can you say the order of whether the ones to the back of the car happened first or the side of the car happened first on the outside?
No.
Can you say whether the shots inside the car happened first or the shots on the outside happened first?
Inside happened first.
So we talked a little bit about defensive wounds on that. Were there any defensive wounds on Anthony Williams?
No.
So there is testimony that there was a driver and a car. Could the driver, Portland Henry, have gotten that angular shot on Anthony Williams?
No.
Why not?
He would have to have a rather large arm. Like, he'd have to be Inspector Gadget.
So in terms of, did you measure the height of Mr. Henry?
Yes.
And what was that height? If you need to refer to your report, please let me know.
He's 70.5 inches tall.
Okay. And in terms of his arm length, did you measure that?
No, I did not.
No. In terms of the height to his shoulder, did you measure that?
No.
So with regards to the length of his arm, why do you say he would have to have Inspector Gadget length arm to get that shot on Anthony Williams?
Because he would have to, it would be a very awkward position that his wrist is, no human wrist is simply capable of being in order to reach around, extend it out, and pull the trigger.
Okay. In terms of the intervening objects, how does that help you in saying where that firearm had to have been?
The firearm had to have been, would be due to the headliner being there. I mean, I'm sorry, the head rest being there. That all puts it all in line with the backseat driver passenger.
Okay. In terms of the angle for the driver to get the shot on Christopher Thomas, is that possible?
No.
Why not?
Because the injury to Christopher Thomas's cheek is an exact circle. And if Cortland Henry is pointing back from the driver's seat to the direction of the position of Christopher Thomas, you would expect to see a leading edge injury to his cheek instead of a perfectly circle on his cheek.
Okay.
On top of it, you would see more blood on the seat that Cortland Henry was sitting in for both. If he were to make both shots of those two individuals, there would be a substantial amount of blood on his seat.
Okay. Now, speaking about the rear passenger, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury or identify who was in that seat?
The rear passenger?
Yes.
Driver's side?
Yes.
I was advised that it was...
So, without going into that, in terms of what you were advised, can you say, based on your own personal knowledge, who was sitting in that seat at the time of this homicide?
That would be Mr. Demins.
Okay. And how can you say that?
Can we approach? Sure.
What's up? What's happening? What's happening?
To get the shot on Christopher Thomas. Is that possible?
No.
Why not?
Because the injury to Christopher Thomas's cheek is an exact circle. And if Cortland Henry is pointing back from the driver's seat to the direction of the position of Christopher Thomas, you would expect to see a leading edge injury to his cheek instead of a perfectly circle on his cheek.
Okay.
On top of it, you would see more blood on the seat that Cortland Henry was sitting in for both. if he were to make both shots of those two individuals, there would be a substantial amount of blood on his seat.
Now, speaking about the rear passenger, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury or identify who was in that seat?
The rear passenger,
Yes.
driver's side,
Yes.
I was advised that it was
Objection, hearsay.
So, without going into that, in terms of what you were advised, can you say, based on your own personal knowledge, who was sitting in that seat at the time of this homicide?
that would be Mr. Demins.
Okay. And how can you say that?
Objection, can we approach?
Sure.
All right, so
Okay. Can you say the length of time between the fatal shots and then the staged drive-by shots later on?
It was enough time for the heart to stop beating, for there to be no circulation due to the wounds that I examined from the medical examiner's office. None of the wounds have any blood in them, which tells me that they're all ante-mortem wounds. So the time was long enough for the heart to stop beating.
Okay. Is there scientific or medical testing to recreate that in any way, shape, or form?
Yes, it's knowledge. It's I'm sure the medical examiner could say the same thing.
So in terms of, it's nothing that can be recreated with a live human?
Correct.
In terms of the number of shots, you said 17 outside the car. How many rounds were fired inside of the car?
3.
And can you exclude the shots to the head for Mr. Williams and Mr. Thomas as coming from outside of the car?
Yes.
How can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of this jury that, for example, shot that was marked as H in the, here, let's go to 6755. How can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that shot H is not the one that wound up in the face of Mr. Thomas?
Because Mr. Thomas is already crumpling at this point, and he is actually he's in the clear, if you will, of site H.
How can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that site H is not the shot to the back of the head of Anthony Williams?
Because site H continues and strikes Anthony Williams in the shoulder.
In terms of site K, the one that goes completely across the car, how can you tell that no one was sitting in the rear driver's side seat when that bullet came through the car?
It would have hit their legs.
Was there any sign of blood or anything on that seat?
There were signs of blood on the seat, yes.
Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what is Blue Star? You've talked about it a little bit.
Blue Star is a chemical that is used in forensics. It's very similar to what most people know as luminol.
What's the difference between the two?
Luminol is a very caustic chemical, and it's not really healthy to use. It's effective, but it's not really healthy to use. Blue Star accomplishes the same thing. It still detects blood diluted up to 100,000 times, and it's not caustic.
Oh.
So it's attracted, luminol and Blue Star, they're both attracted to the Hemi group of blood, primarily iron, and it will detect trace amounts of blood even after it's been washed. So if you have blood on your shirt and you throw it in the wash and throw it in the dryer and then hand it over to me, I'm going to tell you to put it back in the wash because there's blood on it still.
Okay. What if it's been 5 years?
You'll still get that result.
Okay. And what type of result are we looking for?
With luminol, the illumination of the luminescence of the blood, the hemi group, is not as bright, and it is not as lasting. So you have to be very quick with your photograph in order to get it. With Blue Star, it is very bright and it's lasting, so it's long enough for us to get a photograph of it multiple times, and if we need to, we can come back and squirt it.
Okay. In terms of the luminol, does that destroy the DNA?
No.
Does Blue Star destroy DNA?
No.
So is there a version that the sheriff's office uses now? More so than the other? Is there a preference?
We primarily use Blue Star.
Before we end, is that something you could demonstrate here in court as to how Blue Star works?
Yes.
Do you have some with you?
Yes.
Okay. So you're going to state would be asking you to demonstrate and how the Blue Star works?
If you have the show to counsel.
Counsel?
Go ahead.
Counsel.
Need some assistance there?
Detective Williams, if you would be so kind.
Go ahead.
While they're doing?
No, I asked you, I see you move, so I... Hold on, counsel. He wants to take a look at it. What are we going to do?
How Blue Star works?
So, ladies and gentlemen, I understand one of your members needs a restroom break. We'll take a short recess to not discuss the case. Don't form any opinion about the case. Don't allow anyone to discuss the case in your presence or no research. Just leave your notepads on your chair. Thank you. Mr. Howard. I thought, I didn't see any reaction from you. I didn't see you do anything, so I didn't think you were interested in doing it. That's why I said go ahead.
He's getting old, Judge. He needs a little more time to move.
No, I apologize. All right. Mr. Dennis, you need a restroom break?
Yes, sir.
Nope. All right. Thank you. We're in recess.
He better be locked in. Shit, I'll be locked in too. Life on the fucking line. Literally, your life is on the fucking line. Alright. Yeah, I don't understand. Shit.
Let me repeat myself. I'm not saying Young Thug told on anybody. I'm not saying Young Thug gave any information up. What I'm simply blogging on is what the lawyer, Young Thug defense, brought this to the light. All right? Y'all ain't setting gnashing me, man. I see how y'all did, bro. That's wrong. Listen. Then they go on to say, we're fighting tooth and nail to get the paperwork basically sealed. What you mean you fighting tooth and nail to get the paperwork sealed? What? Come on, man. All right, look, man. I'm not giving the benefit of doubt here. We don't give nobody the benefit of doubt. Everybody and their mama has denied paperwork and denied that they gave up information. And then guess what it comes out to be? That they end up did give up some information. Now, 9 times out of 10, it be when they're young. What they accuse the Thug of doing when he's young, giving up information. So what I'm saying is this, bruh. Just because it's Young Thug, which I like Young Thug music, I don't agree with half the things he do as a person. I don't agree with calling men bae. I don't care what the circumstances is. I don't agree with wearing dresses. I don't agree with that flamboyant.
Okay, welcome back, and thanks for sticking with us here at Law and Crime, where we continue to follow the trial of Jamel Demons, better known as YNW Melly. A shooting reconstruction expert, Sergeant Christopher Williams, is still on the stand. Let's go back into court in Broward County. Hear his testimony.
6723, are you showing the same thing?
Yes.
Going to 6730. What are you demonstrating with this trajectory rod and this photo?
So this is the suspected trajectory of the flight path of the projectile that went into Anthony Williams. Again, as I stated, Mr. Williams had his head canted to the right, which is the reasoning for the flight path and its continued perforation into the window, perforated the window and exited the vehicle.
So, Sergeant Williams, I want to ask, were the driver's side window intact?
Yes.
Were you provided the keys to the car to be able to turn the power on and to put them down for the purposes of pictures if need be?
Yes.
So on 6732, what is, you showing the same thing as the last photo?
Correct. This is another demonstrative with the firearm canted and a downward with the ejection port facing down. And again, you would literally have to be leaning into the vehicle and onto the person who is seated in the rear passenger seat behind the driver in order to obtain that shot.
Okay. And is this the opposite angle?
That's one we already discussed.
Okay. Yes, you're right, 6733. Moving on to 6736.
What was the one just before that?
6735. And so in this instance, is this firearm, the magazine has been removed?
Correct, for safety purposes.
Okay. So going on to, again, like I was saying, 6736. What is this showing?
This is just another demonstrative of the firearm canted with the ejection port down and at an angle. Again, you would have to be pressed up against the back seat passenger that's behind the driver in order to obtain that shot.
Okay. And we'll get into in a little bit with the Blue Star as to why you put an individual there. So then you've gone on and showing now on 6739. What are you showing on this particular demonstrative photo?
That is a demonstrative photo showing that a firearm can be fired in the direction of Anthony Williams with the hand and with the elbow up, and the arm does not have to be fully extended in order to fire the firearm.
Okay. So in terms of the trajectories on the back of the car, I'm going to talk a little bit on that aspect. As to one that is labeled A, could you describe where that is on the vehicle?
That is in the rear hatch of the vehicle. It actually perforates the plastic. That whole back of the vehicle where it states Jeep is actually plastic, and it perforates the plastic, perforates the paneling that's on the inside of the vehicle, and it then enters into the bottom of the back seat.
Is that the projectile that you recovered?
Yes.
Okay. Going on to the other ones, we've already looked at 6760 and 6761. On 6755, are you identifying these by the same letters that the Miramar Police Department assigned them?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of the trajectories of B, C, D, E, F, G, and H, were you able to determine if there was a change in the angle side to side on them?
Meaning a shooter's changing
lanes in a car, let's say.
So the majority of these shots was from a standing, stationary position.
And how can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that fact?
Because it's what's known as in firearms as a grouping. So it's grouped pretty close together, which means that the person's stationary, firing a firearm, and actually creating a grouping of. So if the person's moving, you won't have such a grouping, it'll be scattered.
If the vehicle was moving, would that affect it?
Yes.
In terms of the glass in the back, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury whether or not the rods that are indicated, and again the photo that we just looked at, 6753, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H at the top, I'm going to go to photo 6760, if the glass was in place when they went through?
So I would surmise that the first 2 or 3 rounds took out the glass altogether, and the rest of the rounds were not affected by the glass, and that is evident by the firearms unit of our lab being able to positively identify the projectiles, because the glass will make artifacts onto a projectile as the projectile passes through it, and if there's artifacts on there, our lab would not be able to identify those items.
Okay, so you said that you figured 2 or 3. Why would you give a range of 2 or 3 could have gone through the glass?
It's a rather large window. Again, it has the plastic in between it, and it's going to take quite a bit to remove it completely.
Okay. And
now keep in mind, this is not the way that it was when this vehicle presented itself to the hospital.
Please, put the roll here, sure.
investigator and Mr. Shea, not here.
Yes.
So, everybody take a look at what the demonstrative is. Any issue with that?
No, sir.
Jury ready? All right, we're all set. Let's bring the jury in.
Let's see what the people saying.
Jury entering. Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record once again reflect the presence of the defendant, Mr. Devins, his counsel, the assistant state attorneys, and the ladies and gentlemen jury are please remain on the stand. We broke. I think you're going to go over the demonstrative again, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, the witnesses using a demonstrative to assist in explaining or illustrating the testimony. What the witness says is the evidence, and not to be considered by you as evidence unless it's later received. So all the items of evidence go back to the jury room during your deliberations. Proceed, counsel.
Thank you. Sergeant Williams, can you explain what this object is in front of the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
So this is the back seat of a Ford Explorer that was owned by the Broward Sheriff's Office. We were deadlining the vehicle and sending it to auction without seats. They gave me this for this demonstration.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about Blue Star. Can you explain how Blue Star is used and how it is reinstituted or reconstituted, I guess would be the proper term, for use in this?
So we use Blue Star in any crime scene to locate blood. As sometimes when we have an investigation, there will be what is often referred to as cleanup, where the subject who committed the crime will begin to clean up the area to make it look like no crime happened.
And so when is Blue Star come pre-mixed or formulated?
No, so Blue Star comes with a not normally a garbage trigger. So Blue Star comes in a container like this. It comes with a chemilucent solution, and then on top of that, it comes with 3 oxidizing tablets. All of that is contained in this box. I pour the solution into a sprayer bottle. I add 3 oxidizing tablets, and I gently stir it until the oxidizing tablets have dissolved. And once they're dissolved, it is ready to be applied. This is one of many chemicals that we use to detect blood.
And in terms of, is that one toxic?
This one is not toxic.
In terms of the time frame, once you mix it up, how long do you have to use it?
24 hours.
And when did you mix up that batch right there?
About 10 minutes ago.
And in terms of the seat that is in front of the ladies and gentlemen of the jury as the demonstrative, Is it have any visible blood stains on this?
It does have some visible blood stains, and it has some non-visible blood stains.
And how do you know that those blood stains are on that seat?
Because I put them there.
And so, with your permission, Your Honor, if we could dim the lights, so Sergeant Williams could step down and show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how Blue Star works.
Yes, you may step down. Give the lights, please.
My dog getting me mad, bro.
Yes, Your Honor. And so, Sergeant, you're treating the entire seat.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because I don't know where the blood could be. Even though I placed it there, I don't remember exactly, so I'll spray everywhere, and then you see where it all is. You'll see that it lasts a pretty long time, and it allows us to identify where blood is.
Okay.
Everybody see that over there? Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Travis, if you would. Sergeant, I'm going to turn the television on again.
So, Sergeant, did you have the opportunity to process the 2018 Jeep Compass in this case using Blue Star?
Yes, I did.
When you are processing it for Blue Star, do you take initial photographs to show how it looks without Blue Star on it?
Yes.
And is this one of those photos CSW 4835?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And Travis, if I could bother you to dim the lights just slightly? Thank you. And again, going to the next photo that you took, which is CSW 4839.
That would be prior.
Okay. And this is CSW 4841. Again, is this prior to the application of Blue Star?
Yes.
What are we looking at here in this photo?
So this is the application of Blue Star to the picture that was just shown. And it's illuminating blood and the driver's side rear passenger seat. And it clearly shows that somebody was seated in that seat. If you look at right here, that would be where the legs are. And it continues on to show where the buttocks were. And what's very telling is that there's no blood on the back of the back seat, which means that a back was leaning against it.
Why would you expect to see blood on that area?
Because that's going to be from the blowback from Anthony Williams.
And in terms of that seat, did you saturate it like you just demonstrated in court?
Yes.
And for the record, that was 4846. This is 4847. Going out to 4848.
So this is the same back seat, the same area, it's just from a different angle.
And is that kind of the moisture that is showing up in some of the reflection in this photograph? Is that the application of the
Yes,
booster?
from the previous photographs.
So going to this particular side, what are we looking at here?
So here again you have the outline of buttocks, you have where the leg separation is, so there is somebody seated here, and then again this whole entire seat has no blood on it, where this area along here all has blood on it. So this void is indicative of an individual seated in this position.
So, in terms of the seat that we're looking at,
That
right
avoids.
here, remind the ladies and gentlemen of the jury which seat in the car this was.
This is the driver's side back passenger seat.
Did you also do this same testing on the front driver's side, going to photo CSW 4863 for the record?
I did.
And is this seat also processed in the same way?
Correct.
Okay. Again, showing the moisture in this photo of 4865. Was this all done on the same day?
Yes.
And 4866?
That was the smear that the transfer that I was talking about earlier. So I actually swabbed that area with a swab to collect the blood, and then I swabbed an area of non-blood, an area of non-blood, and that's what was submitted to the lab.
Okay. So going forward to 4868 and 4869, and so now we're looking at 4870. What
Correct.
is that showing?
So this is the seat, and
which seat? So it's
this is the driver's seat, and the only illumination on the driver's seat is
So all
the
that
very,
blood.
very edge
Wait.
of the seat.
So all that blood and they didn't find no blood on Melly? But you found blood on Brooke, whatever the boy name is, Portland. But there's no blood on Melly.
Here, the blood actually landed on the individual, and I look. Let me take that out for you real quick. And it landed on the individual, and a little bit on the seat, right around in here, and the rest of it was absorbed by the individual that was seated in that seat.
If there's blood on clothing, would it transfer to the seat?
If it's enough blood, it can transfer. If the clothing has already absorbed it, then it will. It generally will not transfer.
And so going forward now to the same Jeep, where are we looking at the Jeep in this picture?
This is the Broward Sheriff's Office evidence confiscation warehouse for the vehicles.
Okay. So did you use Blue Star again on the door of the Jeep?
I did.
Okay, so this, for the record, we are now 4875. What are we looking at in image 4875?
This is the driver's side rear compartment area with the driver's side rear passenger door in the open position.
Okay. So going forward to the next image, which is 4876, what are we looking at here?
You see that there's a reaction to blood on the door.
And so what does that tell you as a shooting reconstructionist?
Tells me that the door was closed during the shooting incident inside the vehicle.
And again, 48.
Again, you gotta prove that he was in the vehicle.
It's the same thing.
If you can prove that, then hey, y'all got it. But if y'all can't prove that,
So Sergeant Williams, in terms of the stippling and powder tattooing that was present on Mr. Thomas, would you give a range as to how far away a muzzle would have been from his face?
The range that I would give to that would be 8 to 12 inches.
And without the actual firearm that caused that wound, could you do a recreation?
I could not, but again, like I said earlier, this is a unique case where our shooting is confined to a known area with known confinement measurements, and it can be deduced.
Okay, so I want to go to what's been previously in evidence as states 30. On the photographs, we talked about the site K and the strike mark across the car. I wanted to go through, this is photo DSC 0403, DSC 0404, and DSC 0408. You were describing the speaker and things. Is this what you were talking about?
Correct. So if this door, the driver's side passenger door, was in a closed position during the shooting on the passenger side of the vehicle, I would expect to see this projectile strike mark to be in the speaker. So that is indicative of the door being in an open position during the shooting on the passenger side of the vehicle.
Just one moment to confer with co-counsel. And in terms of on this particular strike mark that we're looking at here in states 30, this image, was this from inside the car?
Was the round fired from inside the car?
Correct.
No, the round was fired from outside the passenger side of the vehicle. It perforated the the passenger side rear door, traveled across the vehicle, and penetrated the speaker area on the driver's side rear passenger door.
Okay. I don't have any other questions of this witness.
Thank God. Bitch. Man.
Counsel, thank you. Is there any cross-examination of this witness?
Just a little bit, Your Honor.
Go ahead. Start cooking.
Sergeant.
Sir, good. How are you, Mr. Howard?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Let him cook. Look, people already. He looking.
I want to start by clarifying. You were initially asked to get involved in this investigation in November of 2021.
Correct.
More than 3 years after the actual incident, right?
Yes.
And your initial understanding was that your primary purpose, or at least one of them, was to disprove the notion that there was a drive-by shooting.
Not necessarily disprove it, just to determine if it was a drive-by shooting.
Okay. And you are aware that the person that claimed it was a drive-by shooting is Cortland Henry.
I believe so. I don't know who said that it was a drive-by. I was just asked to say if it was a drive-by.
Okay. And you are aware that when Cortland Henry made this statement, that this gentleman was nowhere around, right?
I wasn't part of the initial investigation,
Okay.
so I don't know if that was included in Miramar's investigation with that.
Okay. But what you are saying is whoever claimed it was a drive-by shooting was lying.
Was incorrect.
Okay. Not necessarily lying, mistaken maybe?
Well, if you want to call him a liar, yeah.
I do.
Okay.
Okay.
So Portland, whatever. He made the statement that it was a drive-by. Melly didn't even make the statement that it was a drive-by.
And I want to start off there. You had indicated that you were of the understanding that there was some blood on Cortland Henry's shirt, right?
Correct.
Cortland Henry, who you understood to be the driver.
Correct.
And there was some blood on the front of his shirt, and there was some blood on the back.
Yes.
And during your testimony, you sat in what would be the driver's seat, right?
Yes.
Now tell me something. Do you know what kind of firearm was used?
No.
What caliber?
40.
40 caliber?
Yes.
If a 40 caliber is fired inside a vehicle,
Oh shit.
will it make a noise?
Yes.
Will it make a loud noise?
Yes.
Okay. And your testimony was that Cortland Henry was sitting here, sitting in his seat, right?
Yes.
Based upon your reconstruction, there was blood spatter that hit the front of his shoulder, and I think your words were, and he was sitting still and not moving, and there was also blood spatter that hit the back of his shirt.
Yes.
Okay, so with a 40 caliber blasting in that car, you're saying that based upon your analysis, Cortland Henry was sitting
He's cooking
still and not budging. That would be your analysis, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So why he sitting
Now,
still?
You also
If-
indicated that
That was set up, bro.
who you believe to have
That was
been
a
sitting
setup.
in the rear passenger seat had a defensive wound
Yes.
in his hands.
In one of his hands.
In his left hand.
Correct.
There was a gunshot wound,
Yes.
and that he was shot from 8 to 12 inches away.
For the cheek.
Okay. So, well, whoever was shooting at him when he had his hands up would have been a pretty bad shot to miss him from 12 inches away and hit his hand.
Well, it didn't say that he was 12 inches away during that shot. State never asked the distance for that shot. State only asked the distance for the cheek.
Okay. Well, you had indicated in your report that you took account of the width of the cabin of that vehicle.
Yes.
What was it?
50.
Feel free to look at your report. I don't want to. It's not a
I
big
think
question.
it's in my notes, but do we have the picture? Can State pull up the picture?
Sure. Should be in your notes.
Oh shit.
You have the same thing with all the pictures you just stuck it in?
It's state 77.
Okay.
$50.5 inches.
50.5 inches. And give us an estimation of what, well, not an estimation, a calculation of what that would be in feet and inches, so that we'd have a better sense.
So 4 feet, 2.5 inches.
4 feet, 2.5 inches.
Yes.
Okay. So the entire inside cabin rear of that vehicle is less than 5 feet wide.
Yes.
4 feet, 2.5 inches, almost 4 feet. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you were saying that there was a shot. How broad was the width of Christopher Thomas's shoulders? You indicated that as well.
It was for to the autopsy.
Yeah, sure.
Look, we was saying, yo, the witness is cooked. They funny as hell, bro. It's looking more and more bad for Portland though, man. So it's hold on, y'all. He's taking a little minute to get his shit together. Let me get this little bit of the drink. I'm gonna eat real quick.
By the way, did you ever account for the width of Christopher Thomas's shoulders at all?
Yes, I think I got it off of the autopsy photos though.
Okay.
So, do we have them that I can review to answer your question?
That would be state 75.
Is this all of them?
That's for Mr. Thomas, and state 73 is Mr. Williams.
Did he say anything? You still looking?
Do you have the one with him on the table with the scale?
That's not in evidence. So, Mr. Howard.
I don't mind you looking at it.
Is that on a thumb drive or just on your computer?
I have it on a drive here, so I'm gonna.
I said, Lord help this man. That girl don't got no cake, bro. That dude's sweating. Yeah. Yo. This chat funny as hell. Hurry up. I think he's nervous. How's L defense? He didn't even get his joint out yet. I'm happy y'all not like judges and shit, cause y'all said nigga guilty, not even no evidence and shit. Kanye did it. My man fell asleep.
Got it?
Yes.
How broad?
2 feet 6 inches.
2 feet 6 inches. So that's more.
That's all he had to
more than
say.
half of the 40 inches.
That is
More than half of the 40.
less than half. Right?
2 feet is
24.
24.
30.
6 inches is 30.
We're at 50 and a half. So, yeah, a little over half.
A lot over half.
A little over half.
60% of the width of the vehicle.
Correct.
According to your measurement.
Right.
Okay. So that means the other person, if they were seated there, would have to be taking up less than 20 inches of space. According to you.
Right.
Okay. And in that less than 20 inches of space, you have a tape measure there?
I wish I did. I have a ruler, I think.
You have a ruler?
I think so.
Please.
Bumbleclots!
Thank you for having me.
Go ahead, brother man. See, my dog even agrees.
All right, so let's just work with our imagination.
Okay.
The total width of the rear of that vehicle is 50 inches.
Now that's the total width from the, where we measured it, which is going to be from the top. The inside, from door to door, is going to be larger. What I did was shoulder.
What are you measuring the top for? What, somebody was up on top of the vehicle?
No.
Oh, what are you talking?
Can we go back to that photo?
Look at her face. See her face like, come on, man. That's how much.
4851, I think it is. Or right here.
4850.
So that's shoulder right there, Mr. Howard. That's shoulder length. It's going to be larger for the seating area.
That seems to be, if I'm not, at 51 inches is the entire width of the inside cabin of that vehicle.
No, that's the shoulder. So it actually
The
gets
shoulder?
wider as it goes down.
What are you talking
This is what he's talking about.
Can we pull up a vehicle? Pull up the vehicle, just an actual picture of the vehicle.
But you're saying that's shoulder?
That's the shoulder.
Okay, well, we're talking about shoulder.
No, you're talking about butts in a seat.
No, let's...
But butts in a seat is going to be bigger than shoulder. You follow what I'm saying?
Okay. I don't, but let me just continue my question and then you can. So the width of that shoulder space is 51 inches actually, not 52. Right?
50 and a half. It's actually 50 and a half.
Okay.
The angle makes it look larger.
And that's at shoulder width.
Shoulder, yes.
The fence is done. Shaking my head.
Christopher Thomas's shoulders account for 30 inches of that 51 and a half.
For the
correct?
shoulder, yes.
Okay. So the other person would have been inside of 20 inches of space on the other side.
Correct.
And firing firearm inside that 20 inches of space, minus the 8 to 12 inches between the muzzle of that gun and that face, right?
Okay.
You agree?
I'm following along with you.
Okay.
But
Now-
can you sit back down?
I will. I'll be back. So I'll give you that he was shot in the face and not the shoulder, right?
What?
He was shot, Mr. Thomas was shot in the face and not the shoulder.
He was shot. Are we talking inside the car or?
Inside the car.
Yes.
I'm talking about the face shot.
Right.
Okay. And however, the person who was doing the shooting is now confined within 20 inches of space, according to your analysis, and the muzzle of their gun was 8 to 12 inches away. Okay? I want you first to look at.
Can we just finish your first question?
I'm about to give it to you. At 6719. Now, first of all, you said you've been in law enforcement now for 20 years. You're starting your 20th year. And a recent promotion, congrats.
Thank you, sir.
In your 20 years of law enforcement experience, have you ever seen anybody fire a firearm like that?
I have never seen anybody fire a firearm because I'm always after the fact.
Okay. Well, you go to the range.
Right. Actually, we fire like that at the range.
You do fire like that at the range?
It's called close quarter shooting.
I'm talking about that picture.
Well,
that's up there. 67.
So if this individual in the sunglasses was standing, that would be considered a close quarter shooting stance.
If they're standing, they're outside.
Same thing. If they're seated, it's close quarter. But can we go back to your other question on the inches?
First, let's talk one at a time. Okay? We're driving
her crazy.
Crazy.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Now, you've indicated to this jury that in your experience, you go to the range with your fellow officers and practice shooting like what we're seeing in that picture, 6119.
6719.
6719.
Put your glasses on.
Put your glasses on.
Yes, that's close quarter shooting.
Okay. And when you say close quarter shooting, you're not talking about somebody holding a firearm in front of them. You're talking about one to the direct side in the way that you have positioned those gentlemen inside that vehicle in your demonstrative shot 6719.
Can you restate that?
Okay. That image we're seeing,
right?
6719.
Yes.
You've seen people fire firearms in the position of the gentleman in the dark glasses.
That is called close quarter shooting, and like I said, I am after the fact on any shooting, but the purpose of that photograph is to show that you can fire a firearm like that.
And that you can fire a firearm like that requiring that ridiculous contortion, right?
How is that a contortion?
Okay.
I mean,
in any event, based upon your analysis, 6719 would be, image 6719 would be how the shooter would have to have been positioned in order to effectuate the shot that you say occurred, correct?
No. I stated that that picture is a demonstrative of showing that you can fire a firearm in close quarters just like that.
Okay. Well, you did not offer another photograph of how the shot that you claim took place from the back of that seat could have been effectuated. That's the only one that you thought to present in your reports.
Actually, you have access to all of these photos.
Correct.
And we went through with the state multiple scenarios of different ideas or ideals of how this could have occurred inside the vehicle, and this is one of them of the multiple that were demonstrated.
Hold on, I gotta get some tissue. Damn,
So you
man.
are indicating that among these pictures here on this drive, there is another?
I believe there's 3 total.
Okay. May I have the witness step down, Your Honor?
6715 is one.
Okay. 6715, isn't that just?
Oh yes, that's correct. I thought that was standing up.
Okay.
I'll come up.
That's the state. Come on.
All right, what's happening? What's happening? L defense, defense losing, defense losing, defense losing. Third. I would have said this. If he shot right here, why blood ain't come on him?
Sure. Well, actually, if you don't mind the witness testifying there, instead of me writing them down, why don't you just tap them as you go?
Okay.
That number is?
6722.
6722. Oh, this person is outside the vehicle, I see.
Correct. That's another demonstrative.
Speak up, sir.
That's another demonstrative.
I thought you said the person wasn't outside the vehicle.
No, you're misunderstanding or you're taking it out of context, actually. So the pictures that I testified to were all demonstrative photos of different scenarios for the shooting.
So the person could have been outside the vehicle?
No.
Okay,
what
but
I testified is that somebody was inside the vehicle, but the pictures that you're referring to are you're saying that I only considered one option when I have multiple options for this.
Okay, I'm asking for you to show me the other demonstrative scenario that you presented or that you devised in your examination with the shooter inside the vehicle.
There's another one outside right there.
I noticed.
When this is cooking, hello.
6726.
Oh my God, the defense stuck.
You can make it bigger so we can all
I
see.
didn't know if you wanted me to.
No, please.
It's another one outside of the vehicle.
Oh, he's outside again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Outside the vehicle. It's another one that we discussed during direct, where he would be up against the person seated in that seat.
And where is the shooter?
Outside of the vehicle.
Thank you.
Another one. We're only talking about Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been in and out of therapy with BetterHelp for a few years now, and it's made prioritizing my mental and emotional health so much easier.
Say that after reviewing all those photographs, the only demonstrative scenario you devised was the one that we discussed that is depicted in 61
6719.
6719.
67.
That's the only one.
Well, there's actually multiple pictures of 6719 at different distances, actually.
Okay, show.
They're all in here. All
Do
of
tell.
these are all different distances for
This-
6719.
The screen is yours.
So you have this one. Can we swipe it? There's two. That just shows the distance for that one. Another distance. There's another one.
Wait a second. What number is that?
6720.
In 6720, the gentleman in the dark glasses is even in a more clownish, awkward position, isn't he? He's in a more awkward position, is he not?
He is in, actually, that's why I wanted you to sit down and finish your first question, because it would make a little more sense to finish that one to explain where you're going with this. Because where you're going with this isn't going to help if I can explain my thought process on
I mean,
injuries
you
and
doing this, and that bitch powerful.
Retake the stand. Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? A gun is powerful.
So, 6720. And the other similar photographs showing the two people in that position at whatever distance the muzzle of the gun is away. The person who got shot, Mr. Thomas.
That is a very awkward position, though.
The person who
Like I could see if a nigga was like, you feel me? Like if he like,
from that distance,
but like this though,
and hit.
that's kind of it hurting my arm.
Thomas in the hand.
The fuck?
According to your scenario, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Not miss. I think he shot him in the hand.
Oh, he deliberately shot him in the
I think
thumb.
he was firing. But so this is where you're not letting me sit down there to explain this. But you got to be there too.
Okay.
I don't bite.
Let's sit down together.
I'll take that seat.
This one.
Alright, so we have a little gap between us, right?
It's a big gap.
It's holds 2 drinks.
Go ahead.
I think he's having a hard time here. See that, please.
Okay, so I'm Thomas. You're holding a gun, right?
Oh, you've turned now.
Well, hell yeah, you're pointing a gun at me.
Okay.
So that's a defensive. Like, whoa, stop.
Okay.
So that's where we're gaining distance now.
Okay.
All right. So that's where that shot came in because what do you think? He's just going to go like that? There's no stippling here. So he's backing up. He's saying, whoa.
Right.
Okay.
And then
he gets shot.
And
then looks down or looks out, somehow looks at his thumb and gets shot.
Okay.
So I think that he's leaning to get away. He wants to get away. He has a gun pointed at him.
Okay. So he's leaning to get away after he gets shot in the hand, and he says, "Oh wow, I got shot. Let me look straight ahead and get shot in the side of the face."
He could be opening the door to try to get out and get shot in the face because he's doing something that's making him look forward. So he's like this, don't shoot me, gets shot, and now he's looking for an escape plan. And there's some reason he's looking forward.
That's everything you came down here to tell. Right?
Well, yeah, because it lets me do this.
Okay.
Lets you smoke it.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to move on to something else for now. You indicated want you to take a look at 6722. This was a scenario that involved the firearm or the shooter being outside the car.
Correct.
And if you would observe in your depiction there, the person who's shooting is looking above the car and sticking his hand not quite inside the vehicle all the way, but up to maybe his elbow.
Beyond the elbow.
A tad?
Well, I don't know approximately how much, but beyond the elbow.
And you
almost to the armpit, actually.
And you opined during your direct testimony that you think it's not likely that the person could be standing outside and get that angle because his arm would have had to have been pressed up against the person in, assuming there was somebody there, in the rear driver's seat.
Correct.
And of course that would be rude, and you wouldn't want to be rude in a shooting.
Well, I mean, if there was somebody sitting there also and you have a gun pointed at you, I would, it's human nature to try to properly hold the person. It's, who is going to let somebody hold up against them and with a gun in their hand?
Okay.
Without taking any action whatsoever.
So part of your analysis here wasn't dealing with just trigonometry and common courtesy, that's being rude, but also your psychology of what that person would have done.
Not necessarily. So for this particular demonstrative, that is my answer. If you have somebody being rude and pointing a gun across you, I would say that it's human nature to hold it. You want to protect yourself. You would want to make sure that nobody gets hurt. But that didn't happen, and we don't have any blood directionality coming this way. So this scenario, although it was hoisted, is not possible.
I just want to be clear. The reason that's not possible is two reasons. One, the shooter would be being discourteous by pressing up against the person in the rear driver's seat, assuming somebody was there, rear driver's side seat. And two, because you were assuming that that person would have grabbed the arm and therefore it couldn't have happened that way. That is your science that makes this shot, not what happened.
And what you're forgetting to mention is the blowback that's on the headliner that would be part of this shooting incident, which you would not, which I testified on direct that you would not have the blowback on the headliner if you had someone outside the car shooting Anthony Williams and shooting Christopher Thomas. So therefore you added rudeness, so I disagree. I agree it's rude to hold somebody up against their car like that. But at the end of the day, it's not possible, based on the blood evidence and the trajectories of this, that somebody was outside of this vehicle shooting into the vehicle.
At the end of the day, it's just not possible. It didn't happen that way.
Correct.
Okay. And I just need this jury to be clear on why, at the end of the day, the shooter was not outside.
Because we don't have the blood evidence and the trajectory to line up with somebody being outside of the car.
Okay. we have another picture here of, is this just another angle? We're talking about 6729. Is this just another angle of that demonstrative that we just saw?
Yes.
Okay. And in your demonstrative, the person doing the shooting isn't even bothering to take a look at his target. He's looking over the top of the vehicle. You see that?
Well, I don't think that we need to be focused on what he's looking at. We need to be focused on the position of the gun and his arm, because those are the two, well, specifically his arm, because his face is not going to fire a gun.
To be real,
his arm and hand is going.
I don't think the shooter will even be that close to the car to want to shoot. I feel like he'll be more away, because I see what the defense is trying to say. Why is the dude so close up to the thing if he's trying to? So I see what the defense trying to say, but
if this, indulge me because we don't have anything for me to ready to demonstrate, but if this, for example, is the frame of the window, there's no way that the person could be like that inside and actually looking at what they're shooting? That's not possible to you.
So you're suggesting that somebody is reached fully into the car, stretching across somebody.
I didn't say anybody was in the rear passenger seat. You did. But
Well,
I'm asking
okay.
you, I'm asking you.
Excuse me, guys, one at a time.
Thank you, Judge. I'm sorry. I'm asking you if it's possible that somebody could actually have been looking through that window at where they're firing instead of looking at the moonlight.
So they would, if they're putting their body into the car, they would actually have.
I don't see nobody even putting their body to the car. I feel like somebody more is gonna be outside. Like, you're standing outside the window, you putting it up. You could shoot outside the fucking car without putting your whole gun in. So I get where he's coming from when he's saying this. Like, why is he's all the way? If you're doing this is your job. How is somebody putting a gun? That don't make no type of sense to me.
I'm talking over you. Yeah, sorry.
You realize we're talking about Christopher Thomas?
Yes.
Who is the person that the photograph up on screen 6729 relates to.
Right.
Okay.
So
let's deal with him before we get to Mr. Williams.
Let me answer.
Okay.
So I testified earlier that this is one shooting incident without the possibility of changing guns. So therefore, both victims are included in a simultaneous shooting incident. So you can talk about Thomas or Williams. Specifically, you're talking about Thomas and an angle that could be obtained. But keep in mind, what you're saying would have to be lined up with Williams as well. And that's why we can't agree to your theory. We have to agree to, your theory has to match the shooting incident, which is simultaneous.
I mean, if you want to be real, somebody can shoot.
Thank God, been in a shooting.
If you're being realistic, bro.
But I have seen on TV where somebody with a...
Speculation, counsel testified.
Rephrase your question.
If somebody with a firearm says, freeze, don't move, could it cause the people inside that vehicle to freeze and not move?
When I work the streets, I tell people to freeze and don't move, and they keep running. So I would disagree.
Nah. How can you disagree? They in a car, though. They in a car.
That's your answer to that?
They in a car. You can't...
These people we're talking about in the scenario I'm presenting to you, sir, are seated inside a vehicle. And somebody is outside and says, freeze, don't move.
In a car.
Do you allow for that possibility?
You in a car. Somebody say, yo, don't move.
The possibility that no, you don't allow for it. I'm not allowing for it because we could sit here until we're both blue in the face and discuss possibilities. And the possibilities that you're suggesting, I don't agree with. Basically, the shooting happened from somebody inside the car. The blood evidence shows that it happened from inside the car. The angles show that it happened from inside the car. So any suggestion of it happening outside of the car I would not entertain, because it's not possible.
Except when called upon to disprove the scenario that I presented to you, you can't do it with science and trigonometry. You're telling me that the scenarios that I presented to you are impossible because of your assessment of whether or not somebody would have grabbed his arm and whether or not somebody would have taken off running. Is that what you're saying?
So the scenarios that you're presenting to me do not line up with the angles into the bodies. Those angles are set. Those angles have been completed.
And them angles be wrong?
Changed. The angle into Anthony Williams' head does not change. The blood spatter that comes onto the headliner.
Now I would have asked.
Personality that it's going, which is
all right, so if somebody shot here,
driver passenger.
how come did the blood spatter?
So anything that you suggest.
That's what I would have asked.
Would not obtain the results that are inside that car right now.
Okay, let's move on.
He is getting cooked though, I ain't gonna lie.
Take a look at photo 6733. We could take a restroom break if the court doesn't mind.
All right, we'll take a short recess, do not discuss the case, ladies and gentlemen. Don't form any opinion about the case, don't allow anyone to discuss the case in your presence, certainly no research, just leave no pledge on the chair. All right, let the record reflect that Drew stepped out, counsel ran along with the defendant. Need your restroom break? You good? All right, we're in recess. Always check with the defendant too.
Yeah, but I don't see somebody just shooting like this and that recoil, like, you know what I'm saying? And no disrespect to Melly, but he a skinny nigga, bro. He ain't no strong ass dude to me. You feel me? So if I'm looking at Melly, if I'm in the judge room and y'all telling me this dude's doing this, he's doing this, like, that's not a proper way to shoot. I could see if he leans in and he, you know what I'm saying? Because my car, if I'm in my car and I'm back in the seat, this is a weird angle. My arm hurts just from doing this. I don't see Melly doing it. I just don't see it. And not even just that though. Like, you're going to sit there and tell me, okay, even if Melly did do that, and even if there was possible somebody shooting like this, because my arm is extending, bro. I'm sorry. I have to get like, you know what I'm saying? I have to be quick, fast. I have to, you know what I'm saying? I don't see it no way, bro. And again, even if he shot, wouldn't the blood splat, which have DNA on Melly that he has blood, he don't have nothing on him again. So even so, they saying the gun and all this shit, it don't fucking matter because the evidence is not in there. They don't have no evidence DNA in the car. They don't have no evidence DNA of no gun. They don't have nothing. So they just saying shit, bro, at this point. You know what I'm saying? defense did go out bad this round. You feel me? But I mean, he still got some gaining. You know.
Welcome back to Law and Crime. The Melly murder trial continues.
Because he's, and I see what the dude's saying though. He's saying on some like realistic shit. When a nigga, you talking about a motherfucker standing over a car, I don't see a motherfucker doing that, bro. I see a motherfucker if he's outside the car, I could see him not even all the way in the car like how they did it. I could see them back. You know what I'm saying? To see the person who they shooting at. But that's just me.
And that you can fire a firearm like that, requiring that ridiculous contortion, right?
How is that a contortion?
Okay. In any event, based upon your analysis, 6719 would be, image 6719 would be how the shooter would have to have been positioned in order to effectuate the shot that you say occurred, correct?
No. I stated that that picture is a demonstrative of showing that you can fire a firearm in close quarters just like that.
Okay. Well, you did not offer another photograph of how the shot that you claim took place from the back of that seat could have been effectuated. That's the only one you thought to present in your reports.
Actually, you have access to all of these photos.
Correct.
And we went through with the state multiple scenarios of different ideas or ideals of how this could have occurred inside the vehicle. And this is one of them of the multiple that were demonstrated.
So you're indicating that among these pictures here on this drive, there is another?
I believe there's three total.
Okay. May I have the witness step down, Your Honor?
6715 is one.
Okay. 6715, isn't that just?
Oh yes, that's correct. I thought that was standing up.
Okay.
I'll come up.
That's a stay. Come on.
I don't prove that he did it though.
See?
You want to write these down?
Sure. Well, actually, if you don't mind the witness testifying there, instead of me writing them down, why don't you just tap them as you go?
Okay.
That number is?
6722.
6722. Oh, this person is outside the vehicle, I see.
Correct. That's another picture demonstrative.
Well, I don't agree with 90% of what Young Thug does. I don't know Young Thug, but what I can say is I like his music. Not his last album. To me, that album is trash. But I like Young Thug music. I know a lot of Young Thug songs by heart. And they said it has nothing to do with the RICO case. Then why don't you allow that man to make a fool of himself and testify, bring his testimony, and let's see that paperwork and what he has to say about it, bro. If y'all don't care, what's this fighting tooth and nail? If it's a lie, why are you fighting tooth and nail to seal the paperwork?
Okay, DJ Academics is going. Oh god, he's live. We're going
Jay's
to
supposed to be calling you up. If you were really trying to run up the bag. I don't know who the fuck this nigga is.
Guys, guess what I'm shooting with today?
I don't know who the fuck this nigga is. But no disrespect to you, homeboy. But if Lena really wanted the bag, it should have been only 2 options to fuck her in the first BBC scene. Y'all know who the 2 options are.
who?
Mirror house phone. Like, come on. That's it. Let's keep it a bean. Let's keep it a bean. I ain't gonna lie. If Adam came to me and be like, yo, Ak, you know you fuck her like, this is a good, I think we hitting 10 mil on that. I would have to consider this shit. We gotta be honest, people.
Fuck out here, Act.
Yo, Adam, you all about the bag? You missed out on the bigger bag. I'm sorry. Yo, chat, you're telling me if it's mirror house phone. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Holy shit.
He's really not talking about fucking.
A jury might have a hard time accepting that type of opinion from a medical doctor, and I think that's why they had this instruction that says if the evidence is subject to 2 or more reasonable interpretations, one pointing toward guilt and one towards innocence, the jury is required to adopt the one pointing towards innocence. So what does that mean? The prosecution has their expert pointing toward guilt. The defense now needs an expert pointing towards innocence. Otherwise, without that conflict, the jury is stuck with accepting the prosecution's experts as true.
Yeah, that's a great
That's
point.
the problem.
And unless they totally discount the expert, which I don't see happening, at least based on what I've seen. So yeah. It's going to be very interesting. We do believe that this may be the last, if not one of the last, witnesses for the prosecution. So we're going to get a sneak peek at
The only way I feel like they could do it, I mean, Melly wasn't there. Y'all have no evidence that Melly was there? Do you have any DNA evidence that my client was there? No? Okay, let's move on. You have no evidence that he was there. You know what I'm saying? So, this is a hard one. This one is a hard one. They said this is the last witness they had. Because they had so many fucking witnesses. They back.
Yeah, this one, no, this one is not even. You talk so much. I gotta keep the throat moving.
This is kind of that hard one, man. But he tired.
Let's go, Jets. I got one more.
Gerhard's Appliances Freedom to Save July 4th sales event is going on now, and we're starting our summer.
He's still talking about this shit, man. So fuck what? You talking about a porn star? I don't know he was talking about this bitch, but he was talking about this bitch all the way back here. You know what I'm saying? He was talking about this bitch all the way back here. Bro, he didn't even do the trial.
All right, let the record reflect the presence of the defendant, Mr. Devens, his counsel, the assistant state attorneys. The witness remains on the stand. Our jury is present. When we broke, you were still on your cross-examination, Mr. Howard. If you're ready, you may continue.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. You know, I got excited. Let me get some stuff I wanted to get out the way.
Okay.
The firearm that you're using in all of these demonstrations is a 9mm?
Yes.
6 Sauer?
Yes. Hey, you're good.
Another thing, we went through the part of your testimony concerning all the potential GSR that you retrieved.
Correct.
Identified, and you swabbed and sent to the lab for testing.
Down did, yeah.
That. And you're aware that none of them came back positive definitively for GSR.
So there's 3 particles to GSR, and what was collected were 2 particle GSRs. So there's elements of GSR in there, just not all 3 of them. And one of them will diminish over time. Obviously, I came into it 3 years later, so the nitrates one will tend to diminish over time. The barium will be around, and the lead will be around, and that's the other 2 particles. So those will stick around because they're stronger metals, but the nitrates that burn, they'll disappear relatively soon, which is generally on the gunshot residue collection kit that there is. It's recommended to collect GSR within 3 hours of the shooting due to wanting to collect those nitrates so that you can have 3 particles. But just because there's not 3 doesn't mean that it's not there. What was collected were 2 particle GSR, which is 2 of the 3 particles of gunshot residue.
Okay. See if you can follow. For there to be a definitive determination that the particles that are being tested represent GSR, there needs to be all 3, correct?
Correct.
And there were not all 3 in this instance, correct?
Correct.
And the reason you think they weren't all 3 is because the 3rd one would have dissipated over time?
Correct.
And you were called in 3 years later?
Yes.
So the incompetence that would have occurred here, it's not your fault that what you're saying is this isn't your fault.
Well, I don't know if that's a fair question. I'm not saying that I'm wrong. I collected what I saw.
Okay.
If I was there on day 1, there would be 3 particle GSR.
You're speculating that there would be 3 particle GSR, correct?
Well, it would be within the time frame.
Right. But you don't know that it would have come back as GSR because there was no definitive determination made on the particles that you collected, correct?
It's not that there is no definitive. So RJ Lee will generally want, I gave you that report. Can I have it back?
This one?
Yeah. So they have on there, I believe it says 2 particle GSR, there's over 9.
Is it correct that as regards the samples that you retrieved, the result of the testing was total particles characteristic of GSR 0?
Correct. So in order to have that, can I have that back? In order to have that, you would need to have all 3. That's my argument. So if you look at the analytical results on page 2, where it says that there's total particles characteristics is 0, and then total 2 component particles is over 9. And it explains up here what two components are. And the two components, it says right here that two component.
You can't read from the report.
All right. Two component and one component GSR are two component and one component particles are consistent with GSR.
But there is no definitive determination that an expert would make that it is GSR without all three components. Is that correct?
No, so you're missing the point. There are three components to GSR. The report that you just referenced states that they found two of the three components of GSR. Now, it is not normal for people to have in their car lead and barium. So lead and barium are going to be in the car from a GSR incident. So those are the two that were collected. The nitrates were not collected because it's 3 years after the fact for me.
Okay.
So,
understood.
Therefore, when it says one component, which is going to be the lead, two component would be the other, which is barium, they are characteristics of GSR. And on that report, it states that two component particles, there are over 9. So that is everything but the nitrates, and if it was collected on day 1, you would have the nitrates. So your argument is not right.
Okay. So let's go now to 67. Oh, we're at 6729. That's the photograph with the gentleman looking at the stars. Let's go to 6730 and get a clearer picture of 6730. 6731. This is another scenario that you.
These scenarios is ass, to be honest.
Correct.
Like they're not real. Nobody's not doing that.
You have someone holding the gun sideways and sticking their hand in the window like I have my phone in my hand right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't consider somebody back here sticking the gun in a way that would be natural to shoot as opposed to what you depicted.
So if I were to consider your scenario, the projectile would actually end up in the headliner and possibly through the roof, because that is a very sharp angle. You're on your knee and you're shooting in an upward position through the window, and it would not hit anybody but the car.
Okay, I'll give you that. This chair, you would agree, that I was trying to demonstrate on is lower than the car window. You'd agree with that?
Yes.
So I wouldn't have been on my knee. I was trying to give you a demonstrative. You can
you can't tell me that.
Okay. So if somebody were sticking their gun in a natural firing motion as opposed to sidearm at the back of that window at an angle that would have allowed the projectile to go through that window, that's not something you considered and thought maybe you might put in the picture as opposed to this guy with the sidearm action?
Well, again, we could go back and forth onto every possible scenario that you could have in your mind. I'm not going to entertain all of your scenarios. If you come up with one that would line up with the blood and the trajectories, then we can talk about that. But as far as your scenarios that are moot, I can't speak to them because they don't make sense.
Fair enough. Have you ever in your 19 plus years seen someone fire a firearm with their hand in the position that you see depicted in your demonstrative 6731? Ever?
Well, as you said earlier, maybe in the movies.
Maybe in a movie. A bad movie.
Whatever movie you want to pick.
In real life, have you ever seen anybody at the range or anywhere fire a firearm in the way that you depicted that person in 6731? Ever?
I don't recall, but it is a possibility that a firearm can be fired in that position without jamming and strike a target.
What?
Okay. Now let's move to 60.
You gotta be a bad mouth. You gotta be John. You gotta be that man on that wall.
Picture, same angle.
You gotta be that man on that wall right there. You gotta be an assassin. You hear me? Hold on. Let me. You got to be that man on that wall right there. If y'all can see that man on that wall, that's John Wick. You have to be the most accurate motherfucker. Cause come on, like if we being realistic, a nigga not gonna shoot like, you know what I'm saying? Like that? Nah, bro. Nah.
Again.
Nah.
Same position.
Same position. 6735, same position.
I'm sorry. Ain't no motherfucker gonna shoot like that, bro. You gotta be him. You really gotta nah, bro. I'm sorry. I'm not going with that. And then he's in the way. So that don't make sense to me. John Wick movies, he shot like that. I said that too. Look, John Wick, you gotta be that man on that wall. I'm sorry.
Okay. You were brought in.
Ain't no motherfucking way, bro.
A shooting reconstruction.
Hold on, y'all.
Correct?
Hold on.
Yes. And prior to doing that, you observed the shooting reconstruction that Miramar did, correct?
Yes.
And I think you said you took one look at it and you knew you had to start from scratch, right?
Yes.
The terms that you use is what Miramar did was the worst thing you had seen in your life, right?
Yes.
Okay, because they used string and some kind of gum, putty. And first of all, in their depictions or in their reconstructions, they had the string sagging.
Yes.
They also had
Hold on.
from all of the perforations tied to the same lamppost, right?
Yeah, to the ruler, like a ruler thing.
The ruler?
I think it was a ruler.
Which didn't make sense at all.
No.
You gotta be the most accurate motherfucker on this planet to even shoot like that. I'm serious. Ain't no way. No way. Melly? And if we saying Melly, fuck no.
Took over was totally incompetent, in your professional opinion.
Improper characterization.
It lacked training.
Okay. When you said it's the worst thing you had seen in your life, your words, what you meant to say was it lacked training.
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, I don't like to be rude, but it lacks training.
Okay. So if you weren't being rude, you would say that it was an incompetent exercise and investigation.
Sustained. Let's move on. You got your point.
Okay. Thanks. And then, when you took over, the first thing you asked the state to do was tell you who, strike that. Did the state tell you who they thought the shooters were?
confession hearsay.
Excuse me, what's your side?
So, did the state tell you who they thought the shooters were?
The state advised me of who the defendants were.
Okay. And they asked you what? What was the analysis they asked you to conduct with respect to the two people they had already identified?
To determine if it was a drive-by shooting or not.
That was the only purpose?
Yes.
Okay. And you asked the state to go and get you the heights of the two defendants that they had already identified, right?
Yes.
And they obliged?
Yes.
Okay. And did you take the measurements yourself?
Yes.
You have your report there?
Yes, sir.
I want you to refresh your recollection.
Objection, proper feature.
Stay. Okay. You determined. Give me a second. After you did you took measurements of Cortland Henry and of Melly, Jamel Devins, right?
Yes.
And you reduced them, you memorialized them in your report, right?
Yes.
And you determined that Cortland Henry's height was 70.5 inches.
Correct.
Which would be how much in feet and inches?
5 feet 10 and a half.
5 feet 8 and a half.
So 60 inches is 5 feet. So 10 inches after that. 5, 10 and a half.
5, 10 and a half? Okay.
Am I wrong?
I don't know if that's fine. 70 inches. Let's just leave it at that.
70.5, yeah.
And you determined that his shooting height was 60 inches.
Correct.
How did you determine that?
So that was from him standing in a standing position, his arm extended out at 90 degrees, and a measurement was obtained from the ground to his finger.
Okay. Could you stand up, if you don't mind, Your Honor, and demonstrate what you determined was a shooting height?
Yes.
Okay. So, stay there for a second. When you say shooting height, stay sideways. You mean hand out at 90 degrees?
No.
Okay. So, when you are determining, stay up there for a second. All right. So, when you say 90 degrees, you are assuming that that person was not shooting at that trajectory or that, correct?
No, not correct.
Okay, but your analysis only took that angle into account.
No.
For the standing shooting height.
So you have two different heights. Sorry, that hurt. Two different heights that are and made into account. So the one that we just talked about, and then we have squatting with the hand out.
Okay.
At 90.
All right.
So now we have what you just asked for, that window. Follow?
Okay. So you determined a standing shooting height of 60 inches, and you determined that by measuring the tip of Cortland Henry's arm from the ground with his arm extended at 90 degrees from his body.
Yes.
Okay, you sit there. And then you also determined you called it a squatting shooting height of 28 inches.
Right?
I keep tripping with this thing.
Lost the wires? I'm sorry, we'll see what we can.
Sorry about that, Jeff. Anchor. Just don't trip. Okay. And you also determined what you refer to as a squatting shooting height of 28 inches, right?
Yes.
And when you say squatting, I think the demonstration you made was doing so.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And you determined that to be 28 inches.
Yes.
Okay. Now, for Jamel Demons, you determined him to be 4.5 inches shorter.
66 inches.
His standing shooting height was
57 inches.
and his squatting shooting height was
31 inches.
So even though he was 4 inches shorter, his squatting shooting height was 3 inches higher than the taller person, Cortland Henry.
Yes, so torsos, you can have a longer torso than Henry. So you can have longer legs but a shorter torso, or a longer torso but shorter legs. So that's how that works to be that way.
So essentially what you're saying is that Cortland Henry has so much more of a deeper squat or a shorter torso that when he squats and extends his arm at 90 degrees, it is 3 inches lower than someone who is 4 inches shorter than him.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's what you say, right? Okay. All right. Now, what did you use these measurements in order? What did you use them for? How did you use them in your analysis?
Objection outside the scope.
Overruled.
So these measurements were used to determine a minimum and a maximum shooting distance from the vehicle.
Okay. I want you to tell me, and you were talking about the perforations that were on the outside of the vehicle.
And to the and yeah, anything from the outside of the vehicle, nothing on the inside.
Okay. So I want to use this red pointer. And let's say, for example, you had an angle like so, right?
Okay.
Into the side of the vehicle. How would you use somebody's height to determine where they were?
Objection, Your Honor, outside the scope of direct. We may approach.
So, hang on, so let's assume this rod was at that angle. Okay? A perforation in the vehicle came from that angle. Okay? You would agree with me that somebody standing here and shooting could make that angle? Yes. And somebody taller than me standing here could make that angle as well? Yes. Okay. And this is not the outside of the car, this is the outside of the car, just for purposes of this demonstration. Okay. And somebody shorter than me could be here and make the same angle, correct? Yes. So, in order for you to come up with a distance for a shooter, you would have to be locked in to whatever that height is, right? No. No? Okay, tell me how.
So you could take, just going to refer to that worksheet that I showed you earlier. Sure. trying to break it down to make it easier to understand because it's quite a bit of math. So I'm just trying to figure it out. That's all.
Take as long as you need.
Mr. Howard, are you ready?
I am, sir.
I'm going to try to do this as painless as possible.
Thank you.
So, in order to get minimum, and just stick with me here, in order to obtain minimum and maximum distance for a shooter, when you have a known height, I would take, let's say for instance, the minimum height. I would take the minimum height minus the strike mark height, times that by the tangent of the angle, times pi divided by 180.
Y'all, I'll be right
Now,
back.
that
I'm about to
being
cut
said,
the. I'm about to cut the live off.
Distance,
you feel me?
or I'm sorry, a height
But I'll be back.
for the shooter.